Here's how one of my students is making $48,000 every single year with having put absolutely no money into investments. It's crazy, guys. Let me talk to you about this strategy that so many of my students are using, but I want to highlight this specific example because this is somebody that specifically wanted to put absolutely no money into investments and is still making $48,000 a year. Guys, that's a salary for some people. $48,000 a year can definitely cover some living expenses for most people. Let's go ahead and dive right in. The first thing that the student did, let's just call him Mark. So Mark went out, he's like, hey man, I don't really have too much cash to invest right now. And quite frankly, is there any way that I can make money without investing any cash at all? And I thought about it and I'm like, yeah, man, there's a strategy that we use with Airbnbs that allows us to do that. I told him about the strategy and exactly how we execute on Airbnbs to make sure that he's making money and actually limits his risk to absolutely zero. There's literally nothing to lose. What he did is step number one is going out and finding an area that you want to rent a house in. Think about areas that are not too densely populated because that usually drives price up. An area it's decently populated, doesn't have to be dense, doesn't have to be remote, but decently populated. An area that does not have a ton of migration. So not a lot of people are moving to this area, but we want to be able to find an area that has tourism still, right? So people are going there for vacation. So whether it's a beach or maybe a city or some area that people are attracted to, people have to be going to this area and getting Airbnbs in that area. We want to see demand before we get something like that in that area. Now, the reason that we want to look for lower migration is because if you have too high of migration, that starts to bring rent prices up. And so they start catching up with the Airbnb rate. Although the Airbnb rate does also grow at that point, it's just we have more margins if we have a market that's, not too hot as far as people moving there, but it's still hot enough to where we're able to generate real demand on Airbnb and sell out for months and months and months. That's step number one. You find an area that you want to get a house in. Step number two, this person basically just called the homeowner and he's like, hey man, I see this house you have listed and I just want to come check it out. So that's all he did. He literally just stopped by, checked it out, and he talked to the homeowner. Now, Mark, of course, he has the ability to negotiate pretty well. So he started talking to his homeowner. He's like, hey man, I like this house. This is great. This is exactly what I need. And he started talking to him about different strategies and different benefits of letting Mark rent this house. So he's like, hey, Mr. Homeowner, if you let me rent your house, I'm going to make sure that this is going to be the most well taken care of house on this entire street. Usually when you have a long-term tenant in a house like this, those tenants do not really take good care of the property. Maybe for the first few weeks, maybe for the first few months, but eventually they just don't really take good care of the property. And so that can become an issue for some homeowners because they're seeing all these walls broken or doors broken or whatever else may happen in a rental home. Obviously that doesn't happen all the time, but I've seen it happen with my own eyes. I do understand that that's a thing and it does happen. However, if you offer this owner two things. Number one, that you're going to take really good care of his property so he has nothing to worry about. In fact, it's actually going to be on Airbnb, Mr. Homeowner. When we have guests coming to the house, they're going to make sure that they take really, really good care of it because they don't want to get charged the cleaning fee. And then it starts to click for the homeowner. And he's like, you know what, Mark, why didn't I think of that? That's a great idea. Number two that we're providing to the homeowner is that we're going to give him a long-term lease. So we're going to lock it in for like 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. The idea is that the homeowner is not going to have to find another tenant for a very, very long time. And so that allows them to be confident in you. They have the understanding that you want to rent out this house from them for 3 years and you're going to take the best care of it possible. So now they're kind of intrigued. Now they're interested. We've got them interested in what we have to say. And so the next thing that Mark did is part number 3 is negotiating a no money down offer. Yes, you heard that right. That's a no money down offer. And the reason that it's no money down is because normally we can get into these houses and maybe pay the first month's rent and a security deposit. It should still be less than about $5,000 for most of these houses. And by the way, I'm talking about Florida numbers. I know the Florida market really well. And so I literally see these numbers all day long. We have an opportunity for these people to get a house in Florida. A lot of times they're able to get them for like $2,000-$3,000. If they're able to get them for $2,000-$3,000, that's their monthly rent. And so we talked to this homeowner and we're like, hey man, how can we get this property without putting any money down? How can we get this property and just not pay anything for rent and then use the Airbnb income to, number one, pay your rent, But number two, if you're willing to do this deal with me, let's also just split the profits. So I'll give you whatever the rent payment is, let's say $2,000 a month. I'll give you your $2,000 a month, and on top of that, whatever profits we make, I'll split with you 50-50. And that's exactly what Mark did. Guys, it's such a cool strategy because he came in and he negotiated this house. He's like, hey, Mr. Homeowner, I'm not gonna pay you your monthly payment. Why don't we just go in on this as partners? You're older, you don't really wanna run the property, but I do. I'll run your property for you. I'll list it on Airbnb. I'll make sure the tenants are good. I'll vet the tenants. I'll set up cleaning, photography, all these different things that have to go into listing on Airbnb. And Mark just offered to take care of them. And this guy's like, okay, well, I don't really have anything to lose. I could technically just kick him out if he doesn't pay. So he decided to pull the trigger on it, and he decided to just risk it all. Mark, thankfully, was very successful with it. We taught him well, and he was able to negotiate this house down. And by down, I mean down to zero. So he was able to get this house to where he's not paying any monthly rent. And then on top of that, he's just splitting the profits with the homeowner. Normally, we target properties that we know that we can rent on Airbnb for at least 3 times the monthly rent. If Mark's monthly rent is $2,000 a month, he's looking for houses that he can Airbnb for $6,000 a month. So that's exactly what happened here. And obviously, guys, this is not every single house. You have to look for these houses. They're not on every single corner, but when you do find them, it's an amazing, amazing model. He was able to get this house, $2,000 a month. That's his total cost on everything, all expenses, including utilities and everything. He was able to get this house, and he's Airbnb-ing it for $6,000 a month. And so he's like, hey, Mr. Homeowner, the first $2,000 that I make is gonna go to pay this lease payment to you. Anything after that, the remaining $4,000, if I make them, I'm gonna split with you 50-50. So now the homeowner is ecstatic. He's making twice as much in rent. He's making $4,000 a month, and Mark is happy because he didn't have to put money into the deal. He literally came in totally hands-free, totally cash-free. He got this access to this house for free, and now he's making $2,000 a month. And so he has 2 of these properties. Mark is doing about $4,000 a month with these properties. So 4 times 12, it's about $48,000 a year. He's actually making slightly more than that, but to keep the math easy, let's just call it $48,000. So he's making $48,000 a year, literally not even owning a single property. He's just using this homeowner's house and generating some capital from that. And so obviously his end goal is to find a homeowner where he's just gonna pay them the $2,000 so he doesn't have to split profits. But it's a great way to get started, especially if you don't have any capital. I know a lot of you have reached out to me and asked about what investments you should be looking at. Well, here's a great opportunity for you to be able to negotiate a house like this, start Airbnb-ing it, start making some cash flow, and then use that cash to invest. All right, you guys, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all on the next video.